definitely. So now, do you think that like as far as origin stories go for these, types of characters, you think that it is important for us to know? I think everybody always talk about like I mean, going back to horror, Michael Myers, right? The first Halloween, we just never know the reason why he killed his sister and that whole aspect, and we're kind of left with this like, okay, why did he, what was the reason, and whatever the case may be. um, is it important for us as readers or the audience in general for us to know the origin stories of these characters and what caused them to become who they become? Does it helps us understand? Do we want that understanding, or does it matter?
Look, just think of when you say Halloween, Rob Zombie did an origin kind of as
Mm-hmm.
to why he is the way he is. Remember
Mm-hmm.
his portrayal of the H2O was, I actually enjoyed that beginning for Mike Myers, the way it worked out. And it made me appreciate the older ones more, surprisingly, going
Mm-hmm.
back. And I'm like, if I could put this origin to the early Jamie Lee Curtis movies,
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate Rob Zombie's version. A lot of people didn't like it. I actually appreciated how he created Michael Myers' backstory.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like I said, with the movies, you can't watch them out of order unless you have some type of origin background. You have to
Right.
have some substance. If you don't have substance, you're gonna go in there and it's gonna be fantastical to you.
Right.
Yay, sparkly
Right.
lights, but there has to be something, some girth to their life. Like why are they the way they are? That's
Right.
what I feel.
I mean, I have my theories on Michael Myers if you go back to the first Halloween, but it's like he comes from like an apparently like an upper income family in a nice suburb. So with the Rob Zombie movie, they took it in a different direction where he's lower economic status and everything he goes through. But with the first Michael Myers, you get the feeling that he comes from a pretty good family. What happened? Why did he kill his sister? And
Mm-hmm.
I have my theories. I think, and we might, if you watch the first Halloween, the boyfriend is with the sister. I guess he sees something going on. We don't know much about that boyfriend. We don't know if he abused Michael off camera. Maybe the boyfriend was there before. We don't, he just kind of slinks off. And Michael doesn't kill the boyfriend. Why didn't he kill the boyfriend? He kills the sister. Is it because he's angry because the sister let the boyfriend in the home and the boyfriend did something to Michael? I don't know. Maybe Michael's just crazy. Who knows? It's something that John Carpenter really didn't say. We never know.
Yeah.
And that's really creepy to me. And when at the end, when they see him and they take off the mask, it's just this blank look on his face.
Mm.
Anybody else have theories on to why he did what he did? I can't think of anything else. And every other origin they threw in, they kind of just tacked on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You were saying before about like with comic books, I think it makes sense that we do kind of learn a little bit about the backstory, why they do what they do. It makes them more interesting, it makes them more relatable. It makes us connect with them or be disgusted by them. But going to the whole like why people do stuff, if you really look at, like, I used to love to read about serial killers. I thought I was going to be a cop, and I used to like some of these stories. A lot of these guys had abuse. A lot of these guys had really bad stuff happen to them. Then they start to like not humanize people as time goes by. But there are some,
Mm-hmm.
there are some of them, like the Michael Myers you guys just said, that did have no clue. Oh, this guy had a good home. He was never sexually abused. He was never abused physically. He got along with people, but by the time he was 30, he was killing and doing stuff that a normal person would do. So I think in life there's not always a why. Well, maybe it's so, like you said before in the last episode, there's the honest ending and there's a Joker. I think in real life there are some people that are just, you can't really comprehend where their mind's at. And I think, in my personal belief, that that's where evil goes, because like we could try to understand, like, even like with, I don't want to get all, too realistic, but even like when you watch things in the news about shooting and stuff, they always try to figure out, why did this boy do that? And I watch these minds and I watch this for entertainment, not for the shooting, but for the people trying to crack the mind of this person. And I'm just like, maybe we're not supposed to know sometimes, because maybe that's why evil does exist, because maybe it's that dark area where most of us don't even go. Comics, it works. Real life doesn't always work.
Well, the thing with the Joker is that he epitomizes, we don't really know what his origin is. We've seen multiple ones, and even in the movie, he said, yeah.
I mean, he even has the Red Hood. When he's a Red Hood, so there's so many different.
But we've never seen him, his face before the Red Hood. There was, the hood symbolizes that you'll never know who he really was, or why he became what he became. How do we know he wasn't already like that before he got into the acid?
Did you guys
maybe,
the
we
new
just don't know.
Now, they're actually doing a storyline that there were possibly 3 different Jokers. Mm-hmm. So 3 different origins. So even like the writers are like, you know what? He doesn't have an origin. Let's give him a bunch. I'm willing to read.
Can I say one thing? We have pointed out mostly DC villains. Do you think DC writes their villains better than Marvel writes their villains?
No, here's the thing. I was going to talk about the Red Skull as a villain, because I mean, controversial. I mean, he is a Nazi hatred type of individual. I mean, when you talk about evil, you talk about Captain America, who is, he's the Sentinel of Liberty, and he's all about, he didn't like bullies. And then you have the Red Skull, who is the total polar opposite of who Captain America is. And the crazy thing about before he became Red Skull, it was Johann Schmidt, and the fact that he was an orphan just like Cap, just like Steve Rogers. He was an orphan. And the funny thing is about his upbringing, which again goes into what we're saying about origins and trying to figure out why. The fact that he lost his mother at childbirth. His mother died bringing him into this world. And then his father basically blamed him for the wife's death and tried to drown him as a baby.
Wow.
Really dark stuff, So it was only by the help, I think, of a nurse or a doctor that stepped in to stop the father. But, long story short, he grew up as an orphan. And the crazy thing about him as a character, his first I guess where he got his first crush was an actual Jewish girl. Actually, it was a Jewish girl he got his first crush with. Then he was a very coy person, and he finally got up enough nerve to ask her out, and she rejects him. So he kills her. That was his first kill, and it starts this path. From that point forward, he's, obviously working with Hitler and so on and so forth, and Hail Hydra, But I feel like the Red Skull, I mean, even the look of who he is, he just looks like there's no rehabilitating, rehabilitating a person like that. He is just the ultimate evil, and he only sees the people that is his Hydra, so-called Hydra organization, are just cogs in the wheel. That's it. He doesn't care about them either. Only thing he cares about is his cause of world dominance. And that's it. So the Red Skull, another villain who I think is under, don't get a lot of props. He's another, to me, he was one of my most scariest villains especially when I read this story on him, his backstory as a character.
I think Joe Simon had mentioned in an interview that the look that Kirby gave him is basically signifies death, basically the skull. And so that's interesting. They didn't really talk much about Simon and Kirby about the Red Skull too much. It's just I read that he symbolized death, and that's about it. I guess you know he was so evil. It's like we really don't have an explanation for him. He is like the Joker. He is what he is. Oh, the other crazy thing about the Joker is that we really don't know his origin, and Batman doesn't either. And Batman's the world's greatest detective, but he can't figure it out. Sort of like I think Christopher Nolan had mentioned, the Joker card is basically chaos. It can be anything, the symbolism of it. So maybe that's why we don't have the definitive origin of the Joker, and why Simon and Kirby really don't talk too much about the Red Skull. It's just he's the personification of death. And if you look at what the Nazis did during World War II and how they killed so many people over nothing but sheer
the fact
hatred,
that they were Jewish.
So why.
Mm-hmm.
Stanley and Jack Kirby, no, I mean Stanley and Steve Ditko, speaking about villains, he's not a super villain, but the unnamed burglar from Amazing Fantasy 15 Spider-Man's origin story. I remember reading in a letter column in one of the old Spider-Man books where it's like they were asking, well, what's the name of the unnamed burglar? And Stan Lee had wrote back, he just said, anyone that goes around killing nice elderly uncles doesn't deserve to have a name.
Oh, I like that.
And Steve Ditko felt that evil doesn't deserve a name. He was very Ayn Randish with that. But it's like, you know what? That's pretty cool that the unnamed burglar, after all these years, is still unnamed. I think they got it wrong in Spider-Man 3 by giving him a name. To me, it's just like he's nameless, he's evil, that's it.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I do think that like certain characters, like y'all brought up Magneto earlier, like Magneto, who grew up in that time, in the concentration camps. And, I mean, obviously the manifestation of his powers happens through puberty, I think, for mutants, for the most part. So, and the fact that, he grew up in such a time where he was, persecuted for being who he was. And obviously it changed his whole perception of the world. And unlike Charles Xavier, who, he feels that, we can all live in unity or live in harmony if they understand us better. Magneto feels like, hey, this is the next step of evolution of man. We shouldn't have to bow down, and I understand the perspectives of both men. I just think it's how Magneto, his actions are somewhat harsh. And I think that's sometimes where we kind of like step away from him a little bit, but we understand his anger and where that anger is coming from. The same thing like the Scarecrow, for a Batman villain, another character who lives in fear. I mean, he was obviously a man who constantly lived in fear. And now he wants to inflict fear on others, and like those type of villains, you kind of like understand them in some way, shape, or form. It's kind of like they're like the Jason Voorhees. They're getting back all the people that picked on them when they were kids, and because they were different, and the fact that he got pushed in the lake and then they didn't pay no attention and he drowned. I mean, tragic, right? So I think we understand, it's like, hey, they're taking the ultimate revenge, and I think that's the thing that we somehow take away from characters. But even like for like General Zod, who to me is another favorite of mine. And I think with Zod, I mean, I know that there's been so many reincarnations of that character. In the movies, I think that they like in the Superman 2 film, they just wanted to play him for the fact that he just wanted to be a ruler, but in the Man of Steel film, I think that he was just you know, he understands that Krypton needs a military, and his whole mission is to make sure that Krypton lives. You know, and you understand his motivation in a way. I mean, he's going about it in a genocidal way. He's killing people. You know, but at the same time, you understand. You understand him as a character. You know, and I think those are sometimes some of the best villains when you kind of understand their reasoning and their purpose. You know.
Well, definitely, a lot of people would say Magneto is right. He just goes about it in the wrong way. Like Wolverine said, if you really believed in this, it'd be you up in this machine. Instead he kidnaps Rogue, but we're talking about the movie. But the comic Magneto, what he says for the most part is true, but he just goes about it in a way that's not constructive. He wants to destroy everything.
Mm-hmm.
And when you destroy everything, you set yourself up for failure, because you're going to try to build something on lies and destruction, and it doesn't work that way. Temporarily, it will work, as we've seen in history, but in the long run, it's going to collapse on itself. It's a shame, because if the things that happened to Magneto did not happen, maybe he would not be a villain. Who knows? Maybe he fights along with Charles Xavier for a better world.
Yeah.
Then again, if you read Marvel Comics, maybe humanity is the greatest villain. Look at how it treats the Hulk. General Ross is, why is he always after the Hulk? Because it's a big, strong, green guy running around. He hasn't done anything to anybody. Why are you after him?
He wants what he has. That's what makes the villain is that they want something. And the Hulk has
the power.
Come on, he can regenerate himself. He has powers that are ridiculous. So he wants what he has. That's the only reason he wants them.
But we might say, like, what are Stanley and Jack Kirby saying about that? Because you have the government after this creature who hasn't done anything to them. All he wants to do is be left alone, basically, when they perfected the formula. But they have the military constantly after him. Even after he proves he's a hero, he gets no rest. General Ross is after him. Talbot is after him. So, is humanity the villain? The mutants, they get persecuted. Why? Because they're different. Why can't they just be left alone? Well, we fear them. Well, they haven't done anything to you yet. But I guess you're going to cut it off at the knees before they can. But to me, it's like...
They want to weaponize him. Think about what humanity does. We fight each other. You know what I mean? So why not take him? They fear him, but they would love to weaponize him. Or soldiers, create these super soldiers. Look at Captain America. The only reason he's there is because they wanted to weaponize the soldiers. You know what I mean? Like, make these super powerful people.
Yeah.
So that's what humanity does. We want to fight each other.
Well, look at how the public is against Spider-Man. If you take Jameson and the paper against Spider-Man, he's just a kid. But Jameson has turned society against him. Is it because he fears what Spider-Man represents? The energy of youth and young people coming of age and maybe changing things? I mean, was Marvel saying that humanity is the villain?
Terminator put it best. It is in our nature to kill ourselves.
That
That
is so true.
Well, you know what?
That is so true.
Look at Jesus. What happened to Jesus?
We don't even have to say it. 33 years on this earth and ta-da!
Yeah. Exactly.
So there's like a little story on Facebook that I read about, these aliens get in contact with Earth, and they're like, "Hey, how you guys doing?" And they're like, "Hey, Jesus came to visit us about 6 months ago. Is he going to visit you anytime soon?" And they're like, "What are you talking about?" And they're like, "Yeah, Jesus visits us like every 6 months. When he first came to us thousands of years ago, You know, we gave him dinner, we spoke to him. You know, he's a really cool guy. We really liked him. So we invite him back, and he comes back every 6 months. And then the aliens turn around to the Earth people and go, how did you treat him the first time he came around? Oh, shit. So, you know, this is a man that basically just talked about peace and love, and we basically crucified him. So who are the real villains?
Humanity.
Well, everybody's a villain to somebody, right?
Yeah.
Right.
That's life, right? We're all.
But then again, we can say that Jesus, not to get too religious with it, but we can say that Jesus said to all of humanity, I still believe in you, and even though I am sacrificed, I'm willing to sacrifice myself because I see the greatness within you, and I'll forgive you, you know. And this makes God not destroy us because Jesus went through that punishment of being sacrificed, but yet in his heart, he could forgive it. So he sees something good within humanity. And I guess we have to see something good, because no matter how bad it gets, if we look at, you know, the abuse that over in India, that the people of India suffered, but yet they got Gandhi, who showed them the way. Over here with the civil rights movement, we had Dr. King. Not perfect men, but they gave themselves over to a better future. So there's hope.
Always hope.
Yeah. So in a way, I guess these superheroes and supervillains kind of represent this struggle of society, basically.
We all fight for hope, every one of us. We all go through something, but there's always a part of us that believes tomorrow's better than today. And I think a lot of the villains forget that. That's what it is. People that forget that become the
You
villain.
said it perfectly.
Yeah. No, definitely.
Personal experience.
Yeah. No, I believe. Yeah, I agree. I mean, there are times when the supervillains do join in with the heroes for a common threat. I mean, where there was times when Doctor Doom had joined in with the Fantastic Four to help in some catastrophic event or something that, I mean, obviously because he something of value is going to be taken from him too. So obviously when you get on that same accord, it's like, okay, well, we work together. Okay, after we're done, okay, we're back to being enemies, you know. So this is just temporary, you know, that type of thing.
Doom does not see himself as a villain. He sees himself as the world's savior. So
No, any of them really do. The good villains never see themselves as a villain.
No, they don't.
They really don't.
No, they don't. You're right. No, that's pretty interesting. What about any women villains? I mean, any women villains that come to mind?
Martha!
Not Martha. Oh man.
I would say Wonder Woman's arch nemesis, the Cheetah. You know, I think she represents. I don't want to get into stereotypes, but I guess the society, the whole Madonna whore syndrome with chauvinism, and Wonder Woman, I guess, is the version of the Madonna, and the Cheetah would be the whore in terms of she's all the negative qualities of women personified, and that's her strength, because logically, Cheetah should be no match for Wonder Woman, logically, but she's more of her philosophical opposite, and that's what makes her so powerful. And I think with a lot of these villains, the philosophical opposite is why, like Luthor and Superman, Joker and Batman, I mean, Batman should be able to punch out the Joker in 1 second, but they're philosophically opposed to one another. And so I think Cheetah might be one of the ultimate female villains. I think Artemis from Wonder Woman is another one. She's basically the dark side of Diana. I believe Artemis is another word for Diana. If you like, what is Artemis? I'm not sure in which language, but Diana and Artemis are the
It's
same.
Greek. Artemis is
name.
Greek. It's a goddess.
Yeah, yeah, and Diana is more.
Okay.
Artemis is a sister too. I'm an English teacher. I know these things.
Oh well, excuse me,
Okay.
English teacher.
And isn't Diana Greek Roman?
Yeah.
But I think the two names are connected. So
Mhm.
I guess Artemis represents her darker side, and
Mm,
I
Goddess of the
Cheetah,
hunt.
and I think Cheetah represents her the negative qualities of womanhood.
mm. That's interesting.
And I
That's
guess we can
interesting.
factor in Catwoman as Batman's female half. Basically, she's the
His
feminine. You know,
Mm,
like you have like everyone has masculine and feminine qualities. Catwoman Selena Kyle represents Batman's feminine side. And I think Dark Knight Rises kind of is cool in the fact that I think Christopher Nolan recognizes the psychology of it. And when he brings them together, they can't get together until she destroys Batman's dark half, which is Bane, and Batman destroys the female dark half, which is Talia. And then they get together at the very end. And the interesting thing, spoiler, is that if you watch Dark Knight Rises at the end, when Batman is dressed in kind of purplish and Selena Kyle is kind of in a blue, and those are their comic book colors, but switched around, which kind of means that they're now together. They melded together as one, you know, man and woman. I thought that was a very interesting piece in Dark Knight Rises. So if anyone else has any other female villains, I can't really think of too many. Yeah.
We could make that another podcast for another day, so we can really think about it.
Huh?
yeah. Yeah, we can make that another
Women villains.
yeah. We can, yeah. No, definitely. Well, I guess we're going to close out this segment and thank you guys again, for awesome show.